The artwork used in today's thumbnail was created by Reno Raphael. See more of this artist's work at twitter.com/RUFFU_. Filipino folklore can be fascinating as much as it can be terrifying. You might even recognize certain names of spirits and creatures from Filipino mythology, like the Aswang or White Lady. Today I've got some allegedly true and scary stories from the Philippines. Carmen Carrion joins us today to help narrate these stories. If you want to hear your story on the show, share it with us at darkstories.org. I'm looking for scary Grand Canyon stories at the moment. Check out eeriecast.com to listen to all my shows audio only. And before we begin, I have a special message. This episode is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Happy birthday to Raid Shadow Legends. This month is Raid's 2nd anniversary, and the game is bigger and better than ever. Over the years, Raid has come a long way and has supported creators like me while offering a fun, gorgeous, and free mobile game that anyone can play. Raid began as a bunch of cool character art and an idea, but then it took off. Now Raid is the #1 RPG in the US with over 1 million daily players and 2 billion total battles. It's a unique, massive community of adventurous RPG fans like me. Working with content creators, Raid has garnered a fan base of players they are so thankful for. The songs, the competitions, the cosplay, all the good times. This is a community for everyone. It's easy to say that now is a better time than any to start playing. Come join and play Raid in its 3rd year for fantastic adventures, legendary heroes, mythical monsters, and most importantly, fun. I really enjoy playing Raid. My favorite parts are unlocking champions and making them as overpowered as possible. I managed to score this really cool demonic-looking guy, so I sacrificed some other champions to make him strong enough to be my new lead guy. Equipping new weapons and armor to your champions is really fun for me too. I've always been a big fan of customizing my characters for specific builds and advantages. Now Raid has 6 straight weeks of anniversary events and tournaments from March 1st to the middle of April that you're not going to want to miss. They're even launching the first clan versus clan tournament, so you can go head to head to see which clan comes out on top. Better yet, Raid is releasing the first champion of the Shadowkin faction, and anything that has Shadow in the name has my attention. If you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you have to do is hit the link in the description or scan the QR code you're seeing right now, and you'll get your free epic champion, Jotun, who is amazing for the Doom Tower by the way. And you'll get 100,000 silver, 50 gems, and the 3 ancient shards so you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get in the game. I mean, look at this cool champion you'll get for free. You'll find your extra rewards here in your inbox for the next 30 days only. Just click right up here, and it's that easy. And just click the link in the description, and I'll see you in the game. Now, let's begin. Blacksmith's Encounter from Anonymous. This story happened just a night before I wrote this down. January 10th, 2018. It was a Wednesday, and it happened in the Philippines. I arrived home from a 3D engineering office that is 45 minutes away from my house. I was excited to get home early, as I wanted to finish the Bowie knife that I forged the previous weekend. I'm a bladesmith, by the way, and a huge fan of the paranormal. Hence, all my blades are named after different pop culture entities. When I arrived home, I quickly changed my clothes from office clothes to my bladesmithing clothes. I saw my sister sitting in the dining room, and I asked her where our parents were. She replied that they hadn't arrived home yet, so I just moved on and go to my shop. My shop is located in our backyard, which is 100 feet away from the rear end of the house. It gets really dark here at night because we're surrounded by trees and there's no light at all except for my shop's light. Fast forward a bit. I decided to call it a night after I accidentally broke my blade's tip, and I immediately called the owner of the blade, telling them what happened. We both got upset, but I told him that I'll be forging a new one for him. He told me if he can see the blade, and this is where it all began. I returned to my shop, still talking to him on the phone. I was holding the blade, and suddenly, I felt that someone was touching my back, slowly slithering their hand from the bottom of my neck down to my hip. I was terrified, but I managed to head to my room calmly, lying down on the bed, still talking to my client. I get this unusual sensation of being stalked, as if someone is watching me from my bedroom window, and in the middle of our conversation, the call just went out. That was weird. I called him again, and after a few seconds, we got cut off again. Then I noticed that a portion of my bed looked compressed, as if someone had been sitting there. This creeps me out, but being used to this kind of stuff, I decided to go downstairs to get some beer in the fridge. And this is where everything got worse. As I went to my 7-step stairs, I noticed from the corner of my eye there was someone outside my living room window, staring at me. A shadow of a man, around 7 feet tall, leaning on my window's frame. What was worse was that I could clearly see the light of a pole across the street through it. They were transparent. Chills crawled up my spine, and then there it was again, the sensation of being touched on my back. I called up my other friend to brush things off. Before he answered, a voice called my name that only few called me. But there was something off with the voice. It was kind of husky with a low, monotonous tone. He, or rather it, called me by the name Romjo. I'm pretty sure this wasn't my parents. They sleep around 9 p.m., and all this happened between 10:30 and 12. This wasn't my only encounter, though. Sometimes I woke up in the bewitching hours with someone calling me by that name, or me waking up with something pulling my right foot off the bed. We have a friendly ghost in the house, but I'm pretty sure this wasn't her, because every time that things like this will happen to me, she isn't around. And sometimes I can see things. I think I have a partial gift of discernment.
Experience 1. Giggles from Sadriex. I used to work for a motorcycle company in a countryside province of the Philippines. Unlike other places, my home island has only one city for now, and that is where our main office is located. My job at the time was a field representative, but I mostly handle the collection of monthly payments from our customers. Most of our customers live in various secluded areas near the shorelines, mountains, and vast forests. Hence, I was required to go to them to collect their payments. More often than not, they supposedly forget their monthly due dates, so it's up to me to remind them. I'm only a 5'6" tall guy, but I'm not skinny. Like my other coworkers and before joining the company, I was an avid mountain biker and hiker. Since I was raised in a very far-off farm with no electricity or motorized transportation, I can tell you why I had the sort of childhood I did, but in a different story. Because of my nature, the office always puts me in charge of going to the most mountainous areas covered by woods. I didn't really complain at first. All of these places that I had to go to were secluded to the point that even electricity is non-existent, and people that live there as if they were in the Middle Ages. I start off early since I had to ride a motorcycle provided by the office as means of transportation. This motorcycle was clunky, old, and had more repairs than a World War II machine. But I trusted enough that I called it Ox, because no matter how hard or impassable the terrain was, it never let me down. But I do have to repair Ox while on the way every now and then, but nothing major. My client for the day was a tribesman who worked in a mine, and it always takes me 2 hours to get to the top of the mountain where his village is situated. The path is very hard, and I was the only one who was able to get to the area. There were no houses along the way, just vast, deep woods all around. You can hear the typical rainforest sounds every time, but this day was different. I stopped for a while and had my breakfast on the side of the road. Ox was parked on a grassy part while my food and hot coffee were placed on top of the gas tank and seat. While I took a sip of my hot drink, I heard what seemed to be giggling from behind me. I looked around, but saw nothing, so I ignored it, thinking it was a bird. But when I bit into my food, I heard it again. Something felt off, but because of the surroundings, everything seemed to fall silent, and I heard what sounded like giggling again, but closer and still from behind. I packed my stuff and unlocked the pin holding my knife. I know that I sound like a coward, but I had experiences with the paranormal since childhood, and some of them get physically dangerous. I relaxed a bit, trying to focus on where the sound was coming from. I know about this giggling sounds, and it could be two things. One is that it's just a playful spirit teasing me, or it could be a bad one that follows you home so it can torment you for the rest of your life. My grandparents taught me that I need to be respectful towards such beings, but I should never show weakness nor fear. I pulled out my 14-inch blade and took a stance as if I'm ready to strike whatever will jump out of the woods. The ordeal lasted about 5 minutes. It was quiet, and I could hear my heartbeat and breathing. I spoke in a serious tone, saying, "I am sorry that I disturbed you, but I am just resting, and I will be on my way now." It was still and silent, and after a few seconds, the normal forest sounds returned. The area felt somewhat normal again, and I said thank you, and went on my way. I reached the small village consisting of no more than 25 houses and saw my client. He offered me coffee and I received my payment, which was 3 months past due. While resting a bit, I recalled what happened. My client suddenly asked me if I didn't encounter any problems along the way. I told him that there were no problems, and then I asked why. He told me that one of the villagers had died recently, and it was very sudden. He told me that one day that the villager had changed and acted odd, becoming paranoid for no reason. They had heard him shouting in the middle of the night and running away to God knows where. He went missing for days and was found dead under a tree. Their elder shaman said that the poor man was haunted by an evil spirit and it took his soul. The poor man was never a brave one to begin with and was really easily scared by anything. I thought about what my client had said, and then I bid him farewell. I rode down the mountain and passed by the spot where I rested and had no other issues. I went home tired and dropped into my bed. I remembered the events that happened, and I thought about that, about what I had encountered back there. Was it the same evil spirit? Did I have a standoff against it and prevail? I had no idea, but I know for sure that with my line of work, it will not be the last time that I will encounter such incidents.
I pray your war has ended. From 19 Delta Scout. Every time I return from a deployment, I don't stay home for very long. I stay home just long enough to drop off my gear, say my hellos to friends and family, then leave again for about a month. Usually I'll fly to Hanover, Germany, to blow off steam and decompress. Anyone who says that they have returned from serving in Iraq or Afghanistan and claims they don't need to blow off steam and decompress has never served in Iraq or Afghanistan. After my last tour of duty in Iraq, however, I decided to change things a bit. Instead of flying to Hanover, I decided to take a trip to my family's native country of the Philippines. I don't know why. I guess it was just something different to do. My mother's family comes from a place in the northern Philippine island of Luzon called Baguio City. For those who have never been there, Baguio is a remarkable place. It's a city built high in the mountains, and only 4 roads lead to and from the sprawling city. Although during typhoon season, only 2 roads lead to and from the city, as the other 2 roads usually get washed out. starting from sea level. It takes between 40 minutes to 1 hour to drive the narrow road that oftentimes doubles back on itself as it snakes around steep gorges, lush green rice terraces, in order to reach the city in the mountains. Amazingly, entire communities and villages are built into the sides of the mountain with houses, shops, and farms literally built on top of each other. There is almost no flat place in Baguio City. A tourist will find that they're either walking up a crowded street or they're walking down a crowded street. The giant SM Mall, located in the bustling shopping district, is also unique in that you can walk in at the ground floor, go up 3 stories, and step off on the ground floor, as the mall is built into the side of a mountain. Narrow streets jam-packed with buses, taxis, jeepneys, and scooters go every which way in the city, leading up and down and around the various schools, restaurants, parks, and markets. Being so high in the mountains, the city of Baguio always enjoys relatively pleasant temperatures all year round, and when the rest of the Philippines is baking in the tropical heat of the summer, the moderate temperatures in Baguio has earned it the unofficial title of the Philippines' summer capital. But it also has its drawbacks, as almost every day during the afternoon between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m., a visitor can expect it to rain. During typhoon season, the rains could last for days and days on end, leaving everything from the hardwood floors to the towels in your closet feeling cold and moist. My mother's family owns a rather tall house atop the tallest hill, which overlooks the city. Her 3-story, 9-bedroom home is built literally on the side of a cliff, with a narrow road running down the small driveway. Again, in this community, homes were built so close together that your next-door neighbor to your left could be in a house situated on ground 10 feet above your house, while your neighbor to your right could be situated on ground 20 feet below you. On the top floor of my mother's home is a balcony, which has a breathtaking view of the entire city and surrounding countryside, as well as the home of our neighbors who live on a narrow cross street at least 100 feet below us. I don't stand out on the balcony for long periods of time because I'm scared of heights, and I tend to get a touch of vertigo if I look out at the panorama for too long. And so it was at my mother's home on top of this hill, on top of this mountain, where I found myself after my last tour of Iraq. And boy, did I need to decompress. Being trapped and surrounded by 12,000 screaming ISIS fighters and being constantly rocketed every day was no picnic. I'd been napping in one of the upstairs bedrooms for most of the afternoon. It had started raining at around 3 p.m., and didn't start to peter off until around 7 p.m. I was feeling restless and closed in, since there was not any reliable internet, and there wasn't much in the way of channels to watch on television, as if I could understand what they were saying anyway. I was all alone in this big house, with nothing to do. I threw on a pair of jeans and a black t-shirt that I bought from the PX at Camp Arifjan in Kuwait, and stepped outside. To get to the street, you had to walk down a narrow flight of stone steps, then get on the second landing, then walk down another flight of narrow stone steps, which wound its way down to the driveway. There was a bright red metal gate, which enclosed the driveway and opened directly into the narrow street in front of the house. Once outside the gate, I turned left to where the road drops another 50 feet to another road below. The angle of the road is so steep that vehicles don't drive down this road, but more fall to the street below. Like I said earlier, the houses, shops, and little stores on the hill were built awfully close to one another. It turned out to be a clear and pleasant evening. I'd expected to see more people running about, but aside from a few stray cats and dogs, and the occasional crowing of a family rooster, I appeared to be alone on the well-lit cobblestone streets. At the base of the hill was another crowded and bustling street. During the daytime, it was filled with automotive shops, marketplaces, restaurants, and places to purchase farming tools and equipment. However, at night, as if by magic, This is all replaced by lounges, karaoke bars, gentlemen's clubs, and places where people can dance and mingle. Feeling in the mood for a nice bourbon and live music, I decided to walk the mile and some change down the hill to one of the nicer lounges at the base of the hill. As I said, the streets were rather narrow and the sidewalks where there were sidewalks were only about 2 feet wide. It was unusually quiet, and the air was still as I began walking down one of the narrow streets, which led down to the main road leading down the hill. I was enjoying the peace and tranquility of it all, and the fact that I didn't have to worry about incoming rocket attacks. I looked around and marveled at how everything here seemed to look like it was frozen in time, and that everything looked exactly like it did when it was first built, back before World War II. The constant rains, lichen, moss, flowers, and vines growing out of the stone retaining walls which lined the streets. It was like a lost city somewhere deep in the Amazon rainforest. I was lost in thought, and I didn't even recognize that I was now at a portion of the road where the streetlights were getting dim. It soon began to get misty. The results of the moist night air mixing with the warmer temperatures, and soon I could not see where I was stepping. I eventually came to a point where the winding road intersected with another main road. I wasn't lost, but I also didn't quite know exactly where I was. I knew, however, that if I kept taking the road that went down, I was going in the right direction. I chose the road going to the right, which seemed to lead down off the hill, so I followed it for a few minutes. Soon a couple of taxi cabs appeared out of the mist and passed me going up the hill, so I knew that I was on the right track. I soon passed a beauty salon, which was on the ground floor of a tall hotel called the Mountainside Inn. I seemed to recall that the lounge that I wanted to visit was behind this establishment, further down the base of the hill. A very narrow side street led off the main road towards the direction of the lounge, but it was shrouded in darkness. I could either continue on the main road, which would eventually lead to the street at the base of the hill, and then turn right and walk towards the lounge, or I could see if this dark, narrow street was actually a shortcut. So I decided to go down the dark and narrow street to see where it led, because I was an American soldier fresh from the war vacationing in a foreign land where I barely recognized any landmarks. So yeah, no common sense. I walked in the middle of the street because the mist and fog were now all around me, and I didn't want to step into a ditch or open drain which I knew lined the streets. The road wound down between the Mountainside Inn on the right and a low stone wall to my left and led downwards, so I knew I was still going in the right direction. But instead of turning left towards the main road at the base of the hill like I'd expected, the road went right, doubling back on itself and winding back up the hill. The houses next to me were pitch black, and there were no working streetlights here, as the mist seemed to swallow me in its embrace. I thought about doubling back and walking to the main road, but I wasn't really in a hurry. Plus, this walk was kind of cool. In fact, it was getting cooler by the second. It was downright chilly. Just as I had the feeling that I wasn't alone on this dark stretch of road, an icy chill ran up my spine, and I could just barely see my shadow in front of me, from a faint glow to my back. Thinking that a car was approaching behind me, I turned around to see a young lady in a white dress standing 10 feet from me. At first I thought that the reason I could see her was because of the light from the moon, but I soon realized she was the one who was glowing. Huh? I thought. That's cool. I stared at her for a second. The air around her seemed to shimmer ever so slightly, so I couldn't see her in any exact detail. However, from the expression on her face, I could tell that this young lady was not happy to see me. With my knowledge of the traditional Filipino language, somewhere between none and zero, I did the only thing I could do. "Hi," I said in English. The glowing young lady with the angry expression said nothing, but in my head I could hear, "Japanese." Wait, what? I said. How did you do that? "You are a soldier. You are Japanese," came the angry voice in my head in an accusing tone. "You are a Japanese soldier." Well, yeah, but I'm only about a quarter Japanese. I'm mostly Filipino. And a little Spanish and Chinese, if my mom is to be believed. Grandma got around a lot, I guess. "You are a Japanese soldier," she screamed in my head. "You do not belong here. This is our land." Somewhere in her rage, I could also hear desperation and sadness. During the Japanese invasion of the Philippines in World War II, the Japanese had done unspeakably cruel and violent things to the Filipino people. Back then, in the eyes of some of the Japanese, the Filipino people were seen as subhuman, and the Japanese soldiers often took pleasure in tossing Filipino babies into the air so that they could try to impale them with bayonets. In fact, the reason why I'm part Japanese was because a Japanese soldier had gotten my grandmother pregnant. My mother had told me stories of a young lady in a white dress that was savagely, assaulted and brutally murdered by the Japanese. Her ghost is said to haunt these hills, guiding innocent travelers who may have gotten lost, and frightening evil men who had wicked intentions. I'm not frightened of you, miss. I'm not an evil man and I have no wicked intentions. Japanese soldier, she hissed. Yes, I admitted. I am part Japanese, and yes, I am a soldier, but I'm an American soldier. I paused, wondering if she would say anything. She just stared at me, as if waiting. We fought side by side with you. We suffered with you. We bled and died with you. And together we were defeated by the Japanese with you. But a promise was fulfilled. We returned again, and we threw out the Japanese soldiers. This land belongs to the Filipino people. I'm sorry for what happened to you, but I am not your enemy. I am an American soldier. The young lady regarded me for a second, then slowly turned away, seeming to take the mist with her. The air grew warmer, and the streetlights flickered on as she slowly vanished. Go with God, I said as she finally faded from view. In my head, I heard one last word. Salamat. Later, as I was relaxing and enjoying a nice bourbon on the rocks at the crowded Miles Club, I asked a friendly bartender what the word salamat means. Wait, you're Filipino and you don't know what salamat means? Humor me, I said. Salamat, said the bartender, is Filipino for thank you.
Experience 2 from Sadriex. I am an avid knife enthusiast, and I love sharp objects, which lead me to my hobby of blade making. My grandfather gave me my first blade when I was around 7 years old. I know I was too young. It was a 17-inch bolo forged by a local blacksmith and was made from iron. I loved that blade, and I would often bring it with me everywhere I would play. The reason why my grandfather gave it to me was because there is this belief that iron can protect you and harm evil entities that would try to harm you. He told me a story about the time my uncle and father were chased by a manananggal. A manananggal is an evil vampiric monster in the Philippines that looks like a half-bodied woman with bat wings, which it uses to fly around every night while its innards dangle out from where the hips should be, connected to the lower body. It has a long tongue that it uses to slip through even the tiniest crevices on the roof and suck the unborn baby inside the womb of a sleeping mother. There are ways to kill such a monster, and one of the most effective methods is to find the lower body and put ash, salt, or shards of glass on the open area where the Manananggal will reconnect its body. Now back to the story. My uncle and father were young and foolish, so much that they sometimes venture out at night and test each other's courage. The incident happened a few months after they moved into our farm. There was no electricity, and the only light at night was a small flame from a gas lamp. They went out daring each other about things and to see if they could encounter something scary, which they were not disappointed to find that they did. My uncle was the first one to shout, taunting what was ever out there, while my father remained silent, trying to keep his cool. They walked around the rice field, still calling out. My father only spoke a few things as he followed his little brother along. An hour later, something heeded their call. The crickets went loud and the wind blew harder, as if there was a storm coming. They stayed close to each other while their heads tilted up, looking around, clearly shocked by what was happening. My father, in a panic, told my uncle that they needed to go home, and just when they were about to head off, a strong gust of wind blew, and followed by a loud flapping of wings. The sound was clearly not from a small pair of wings, but they knew it was from a larger pair. They hurriedly ran towards the direction of their house while this thing was coming at them, and it gave chase. It tried to swoop down, but a couple of trees blocked its path, and my father caught a glimpse of this bat-like monstrosity. It had long, shaggy hair, bright orange eyes, and was wearing an old blouse. They ran faster, but the problem was the house is situated on the top of a hill, with no trees and no cover. They stayed low under a citrus tree for a while and decided to make a break for it. My father was never known for his leg strength, and this hill was very steep, which means whatever running speed he can give will be reduced by half. And yet with that happening, he was able to sprint up with his brother as if it was flat ground. They often say that adrenaline can do wonders. They reached the house, which at a time was made from bamboo walls and had a grass roof, your typical hut. They closed the doors and windows. My uncle grabbed my grandfather's bolo and held it tight. One of the things that our old ancestors passed down to us was how to ward off or scare off unnatural beings. My uncle started to pull the bolo halfway out of its wooden sheath and forcefully put it back in, so that it will make a loud sound that these kinds of monsters know much too well. The sound it made is an indication that the tenants are armed and are ready to fight. This sort of trick only works if your blade has been forged and is made from iron. The Manananggal flew around a couple of times, circling the house before it left. While this was happening, my grandfather and grandmother were in a different town visiting our relatives, and was not home for days. My father and uncle did not sleep and waited for sunrise. When the warm ray of light peeked through the crevice of the door, they finally felt relief. My father's uncle came around that afternoon to say hi, and was told about what happened. He thought it was stupid for my father and my uncle to challenge unknowns and not think of the consequences. My grandfather was told about what they did, and it was only natural that they got not only a tongue lashing but a few whips at the back as well. When I was born, my grandparents were the ones who raised me, and due to what happened with my uncle and my father, so my grandfather thought that his little firstborn grandson might get into some trouble as well, since I was told that even at a very young age, I tend to wander off to the woods playing by myself. This is why he gave me my first blade and told me to never let go of it if I wander off somewhere. Being incredibly young, I never gave mine to it, and was only happy to have had my blade by my side. It was strange for some people that most kids wanted the latest toys But for me, I wanted the biggest blade. So if you're going to have your own personal blade, try to get one that's handmade and is made from iron. Stainless steel may be less troublesome to maintain, but it never hurts to have something that may protect you, not just from other humans, but also from whatever else is out there.